This happened about 3 months ago. I had just settled into my new apartment after my divorce. I was trying to find my way among the hip cafes and art galleries. I thought I would feel safe in my cozy place. But then the late-night deliveries started. I still can't shake the feeling they brought. One night, I ordered pizza. I sat down, opening the box and savoring the first bite. Suddenly, I heard a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole but saw no one. It felt strange, but I opened the door anyway. There was a small delivery box on my welcome mat. I picked it up, and a chill ran down my spine. I hadn't ordered sushi. Inside was a note that said, "Try this. It's for you." I laughed at myself for being nervous. Maybe it was just a mix-up. A week passed, and the doorbell rang again late at night. I hesitated but went to look. This time it was tacos. I checked the note, and it said, "Taste and experience what you haven't before." My heart raced. Why was this happening? Who was sending these to me? I still had the last note tucked away. I wasn't sure why I didn't throw it out. The deliveries kept coming. Each one was weirder than the last. Once, I found a jar with some unholy mix, a blend of greasy fries and sweet spaghetti. It looked gross. The note read, "You need this." A knot formed in my stomach. What did it mean? I didn't understand. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but couldn't bring myself to do it. Then I found a drawing of a man. He was standing alone, and it looked just like me. I felt like someone was watching me. I knew I had to do something. I started to feel uneasy in my own home. Staring out the window, shadows moved. Maybe I was just being paranoid, but then I thought, what if it wasn't just a prank? That night, I decided to wait up. I sat on my couch, clutching my phone. I listened intently for the faint sound of footsteps. My heart was pounding as those shadows flitted across my window. A part of me felt scared. The silence grew louder. Then, I heard a soft knock at my door. So close. I stood up, nervous. I approached the door and took a deep breath. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. Before I could turn it, a voice whispered from the other side. "Why don't you try accepting what's coming?" I froze. I didn't know who it was. My heart raced. I called out, "Who's there?" But there was no answer. Just silence. I was alone, or so I thought. I never opened the door. It felt wrong. The late-night food deliveries continued to haunt me. I knew I had to face the unknown. But I was terrified of what was waiting on the other side. The next day, I barely slept. I was on high alert. Every sound in my apartment made me jump. Had I really heard that voice? I tried to shake it off, but my gut told me something wasn't right. I needed to find out who was behind these deliveries. Determined to confront my fears, I decided to visit the local cafe, a bustling place where I could gather my thoughts. As I sipped my coffee, I couldn't help but scan the room. It was filled with familiar faces, but I was looking for someone, anyone, who might have answers. I felt like a detective on a strange case. Flipping through my phone, I thought about documenting the deliveries. I began jotting down the details, the dates, the food items, the odd notes. It felt weirdly like a record of some haunting. Maybe if I saw it all laid out, I could make sense of it. Suddenly, I caught sight of a figure across the cafe. A guy was staring at me. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. He had dark hair and an intense gaze. I felt a shiver. It was the sort of look that said he knew more than he was letting on. Before I could approach him, he turned and slipped out of the cafe. My instincts kicked in. I followed him outside. The air was cool against my skin as I hurried after him, trying to keep a distance. I had to know who he was. He walked quickly, glancing over his shoulder, and that made my heart race. Just as I opened my mouth to call out, he ducked into an alley. I hesitated. Should I follow? I took a deep breath and made up my mind. I had to know if he knew something about the deliveries. I walked into the alley. The darkness closed in around me, making everything seem eerie. I followed the sound of his footsteps, but when I turned a corner, he was gone. My pulse quickened. I looked around, scanning every shadow. Then, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Lying on the ground was a small cardboard box. It looked exactly like the ones I had received, but this one was slightly open. I knelt down to inspect it. Inside, I saw something that made me shiver. A note with the same handwriting as the others. It read, "Don't ignore what's coming. You have to confront your fears." I felt the walls of reality closing in on me. Who was this guy? What did he want? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Before I had time to panic, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around and there he was, the guy from the cafe. My breath caught in my throat. "You need to understand," he said, his face serious. "They're not just deliveries. They're a warning." That's when I saw it. A figure lurking in the shadows at the end of the alley. My body went cold. I felt exposed. I knew I had to get out of there, but my legs felt heavy. I bolted back the way I came, heart pounding louder than the footsteps that followed. I ran as fast as I could, my breath coming in short gasps. I could hear footsteps echoing behind me, maybe closer than I wanted to believe. I didn't dare look back. I headed toward the main street, hoping the crowd would shield me. Bursting out of the alley, I stumbled into a group of people waiting for a bus. I felt safe for a moment, pretending I was just another person caught up in the evening rush. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see that dark figure trailing me. Nothing. Just the buzzing city and the distant sounds of cars. "Are you okay?" one of the women in the group asked, her eyes narrowing with concern. I must have looked like a mess. I nodded, swallowing hard. I wasn't okay. My heart threatened to break through my chest, but I couldn't let anyone see that. I needed to regain control. As the bus approached, I tried to collect my thoughts. The cafe man had said the deliveries were a warning. A warning for what? I needed answers, and sitting around wouldn't help. I pulled out my phone again, scanning for any contact information from the deliveries. Maybe one of the businesses could offer a clue. I settled into a seat on the bus, still trembling. I dialed the number printed on one of the boxes, but the line went straight to voicemail. I left a frantic message, pleading for help, feeling a bit foolish. I didn't even know if they'd take me seriously. Suddenly the bus jolted to a stop and the lights flickered. It felt like a scene out of a horror movie. I looked around nervously, and then I saw him. The guy from the cafe stood at the bus stop, staring right at me through the window. My stomach dropped. I had to get away. I pushed my way past other passengers, desperate to get off the bus. As soon as the doors opened, I jumped out and took off running again. This time, I headed down a quieter street, the familiar hum of the city fading behind me. What did he want? I felt panicked and hunted. Was he even real? My mind raced, jumping from worry to worry. I had to confront this. I couldn't let fear control me. Eventually, I found a secluded park bench and sat down, trying to catch my breath. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from an unknown number. My hand shook as I opened it. "Meet me at the old warehouse by the docks. You need to know what's really happening." I stared at it, feeling a mix of dread and curiosity wash over me. I wanted to understand, but at what cost? What waited for me at the warehouse? Before I could think it through, I was on my feet again, rushing toward the docks. The night stretched ahead of me, filled with questions that felt like looming shadows. As I arrived at the warehouse, I knew I was stepping into the unknown. My heart raced as I pushed the heavy door open, the metal screeching like a warning. What I found inside would change everything. Inside the warehouse, darkness enveloped me. The air was thick and musty, carrying the faint scent of salt and decay. My heart pounded as I squinted into the shadows, searching for any sign of the person who had texted me. Silence stretched around me, and I felt small in the vast room filled with towering stacks of crates. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing off the cold concrete walls. No answer. I took a cautious step forward, the sound of my sneakers against the floor, the only noise breaking the stillness. The dim light from a single hanging bulb near the entrance flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, a noise broke through the silence, a soft rustling from the far corner. My stomach twisted. Was it just my imagination, or was someone really here with me? I moved closer, my instincts screaming at me to turn back, but curiosity pulled me in. As I edged toward the sound, I noticed something beside a stack of boxes. A small parcel, the same type I had seen during the deliveries at the cafe. I knelt down, my fingers brushing against the rough cardboard. It was addressed with a name I didn't recognize. George Henson. The return address was vague, just a series of numbers and letters. Who was George? Why was his name connected to these deliveries? I turned the parcel over in my hands, and just as I did, I heard footsteps approaching. My breath hitched in my throat. I wasn't alone anymore. I stood up quickly, clutching the box tightly, and prepared myself to confront whoever it was. That's when I saw him. The cafe man, framed by the light of the entrance. He looked different in this setting, more dangerous even. His eyes had an intensity I hadn't seen before. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice low and steady, sending chills down my spine. "Why did you text me?" I demanded, clutching the parcel to my chest as if it could offer some protection. "What do you want?" He took a step forward, and I instinctively stepped back. "You have to understand, it's not safe. They're watching you. The deliveries are just the beginning." My mind raced. Who was watching me? The fear that had crept up my spine turned into a frantic pulse. "Who's they?" I pressed. It felt like every question I asked led to more confusion. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the power in the warehouse flickered again, and then went out completely. The darkness swallowed us whole, plunging me into a state of panic. I couldn't hear anything, not even his breath. Then everything went dark. "Run!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. I didn't think twice. I bolted toward the exit, the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. But just as I reached the door, I felt a hand grasp my shoulder. This was not over. The grip on my shoulder was firm, anchoring me to the moment. I spun around, ready to fight back, but the cafe man was right behind me. His expression was one of urgency mixed with fear. "Not them!" he hissed, glancing toward the dark corners of the warehouse. "We have to go." I wasn't sure who "them" was, but the panic lacing his voice sent chills through me. I took a step back, trying to create distance. "You're the one who led me here." "Trust me, please," he urged, his eyes darting nervously. "I didn't want you to find out like this." Before I could respond, a noise echoed from the far side of the warehouse, a low rumble followed by a sharp crack, like something heavy being shifted. My heart raced again, and without thinking, I turned and ran towards the exit. The cafe man followed closely behind me, his footsteps matching my frantic pace. The exit loomed ahead, dimly lit by a flickering bulb. My fingers were trembling, reaching for the door handle when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps approaching from behind. They were fast, purposeful. "Don't look back," he shouted, grabbing my arm and propelling me forward. The handle turned, and I burst out into the night, skidding to a halt in the gravel parking lot outside. I inhaled deeply, the cool air burning my lungs, but the sense of safety was short-lived. The cafe man paused beside me, scanning the darkened street. "Who's after us?" I gasped, still trying to catch my breath. "What's going on?" "There's no time. I'll explain, but we need to get out of here first." He glanced over his shoulder, tension written all over his face. "They'll be here any second." I looked toward the warehouse, and for the first time, I noticed the shadows shifting near the entrance. Figures were emerging from the blackness, their forms obscured by the darkness. It felt like a scene from a nightmare. My blood ran cold. "Get in the car." The cafe man pulled me towards an old sedan parked at the edge of the lot. The trunk was open, hinting at a hurried escape. I climbed inside, my heart racing, and he slid into the driver's seat, slamming the door behind him. "Lock the doors," he instructed, his voice tense. I fumbled with the locks, each click echoing my rising fear. He started the engine, the sound muffled but somehow sinister in the quiet of the night. Just as we prepared to leave, I saw the figures from the warehouse advancing toward us, their movements quickening. My stomach dropped. As we sped away, I glanced over my shoulder. The last thing I saw was one of the shadows stepping into the glow of the streetlight. It was a face I didn't recognize, but something about it felt ominously familiar. "What was in that box?" I asked, panic rising again. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flooding his features. "It's more than just a package. It's connected to everything. To George." "Who even is George?" He sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. I could see he was grappling with his words. But as he opened his mouth to explain, the car lurched to a stop. "That's when I heard it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. My heart sank as the sirens blared closer. "What are we doing?" I barely managed to utter, panic knotting in my stomach. "We can't stay here. We need to take a back route," he said, eyes darting between me and the rearview mirror. He yanked the wheel, sending the car onto the gravel shoulder that led away from the main road. The tires kicked up dust as the headlights flickered across the trees lining the edge of the lot. I clutched the seat, the sudden movement making me feel unsteady. "But they're coming! We can't—" "We'll be fine. Just stay calm," he snapped. But the conviction in his voice didn't settle my nerves. As the sirens faded into the distance, I turned toward the cafe man, desperate for answers. "Who are those people? And what's in that box?" He hesitated, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "It's complicated. The box contained documents. Very important documents that can shake everything you thought you knew about George." "Why was I involved in this?" I shot back, my frustration bubbling over. "What do you mean, everything about George? Who is he?" His gaze remained fixed on the road, but I could sense his internal struggle. "George is— He was part of something bigger, something dangerous. He was seeking the truth, and now that truth is a threat to those who want to keep it hidden." Confusion clouded my mind. Threat? Are we talking about a crime organization? Government secrets? What do you mean? Suddenly, the headlights of a car appeared behind us, piercing through the dark. My stomach dipped. "We're being followed! Damn it!" He hit the gas, the engine roaring as he veered into a side road. The landscape transformed into a maze of trees and underbrush, the asphalt giving way to a rough path. "Why can't you just tell me everything right now?" I shouted, panic rising. "This is insane." "I can't," he snapped. "Not yet. I need to get us somewhere safe first." I glanced back at the pursuing vehicle, its headlights closing in. What if they get us? What if they find out what's in the box? His grip tightened on the wheel as he navigated the winding road. "If they get the box, they'll stop at nothing to keep it quiet. You have to trust me. We're running out of time." As we tore through the night, his words began to sink in. There was something about George, the box, and now these people after us. It felt too tangled, too dangerous. Just then, my phone buzzed urgently in my pocket. I fished it out, glancing at the screen. "No service?" I murmured, bewildered. But before I could voice my worry, a flash illuminated the trees ahead, revealing a fork in the road, a decision that could change everything. "Left or right?" I blurted. The headlights behind us loomed larger, racing ever closer. He didn't respond, eyes fixated ahead as the tension crackled in the air. Finally, he shouted, "Right!" I pointed. "Go right!" As the car skidded onto the new path, I felt an unsettling certainty that whatever lay ahead wouldn't just be an escape. It was a turning point, and everything was about to change. The car lurched as we took the sharp turn. The thud of my heart matched the pounding of the engine. The headlights of our pursuers flickered in and out of visibility as we twisted deeper into the woods. My thoughts raced even faster than the car, every wild possibility flashing before me. "What now?" I finally asked, trying to cut through the chaos swelling in my chest. "We need to find somewhere to hide," he replied, voice strained. "There's a cabin up ahead. It's old, but it might do." "A cabin? How do you know about that?" I pressed, feeling a mix of dread and curiosity. "Trust me," he said again, irritation tinging his words. Before I could respond, the headlights behind us blared once more, painting an eerie glow on the trees surrounding us. The car's engine screamed, pushing harder against the gravel underfoot. My hand instinctively reached for the box at my feet. The thought of our pursuers capturing it made my skin crawl. "We can't risk them knowing about the box," I blurted. "What's actually in there?" He shot me a glance, and for the first time I saw true fear in his eyes. "It's information that connects George to everything. If they get it, they'll know we have it. They'll come for us." "What kind of information?" "I can't say," he gritted out, cutting me off sharply. "Not now." As we barreled down the narrow path, I spotted a flicker of light through the trees ahead, a sight both hopeful and frightening. "Is that it?" The The cabin? I dared to ask. Yeah, he confirmed, his tone rushing toward desperation. Get ready. The lights of the pursuing car began to waver behind us, but we weren't safe yet. With a sudden jolt, we swung into a rough clearing. The structure loomed before us, weathered, dark, and seemingly abandoned. Out! He ordered, throwing the car into park. I scrambled to undo my seatbelt, but every second felt critical. I could hear the engine of the other car revving behind us, its metallic growl echoing through the woods. As we darted toward the cabin, I felt a chill run down my spine. The door creaked open, spilling out shadows and a musty smell. The cafe man hesitated by the threshold. Stay close, he warned, glancing back toward the road. I stepped inside, heart racing, and as I looked around I felt a peculiar sense of unease settle in my gut. The cabin was filled with scattered papers, some old furniture, and an unsettling sense that someone had been living there not long ago. I barely had time to take it all in before a sound made me freeze. Footsteps. They were coming closer. Someone was out there. Do you hear that? I whispered, adrenaline surging. He nodded, eyes wide. They found us. Before I could think of an escape route, the air went cold. Then the cabin door slammed shut, and suddenly I was enveloped in darkness. What the hell? I murmured, panic bubbling up inside me. From the outside, a whispered exchange broke the silence. Words too muffled to make out, but the tension was palpable. It was clear we weren't alone. I need to know what's in that box, I urged him. Please. But his eyes looked past me, pleading with urgency and fear. If they find us here, we won't just be in danger. We'll be dead. That's when a loud bang echoed against the door. The bang sent a shockwave through my body. I jumped, heart pounding, and glanced back at him. Fear twisted his features. Get down! He hissed, crouching low and pulling me toward a threadbare couch in the corner. The old wood floor creaked under my weight as I moved. I peered cautiously over the couch. The door rattled again, louder this time, the sound menacing and relentless. Whoever was outside was trying to get in. Maybe they won't check here, I whispered, praying for a miracle. His eyes narrowed, and he shook his head slowly. They know we're inside. They won't stop until they find us. A wave of dread washed over me. I felt like prey, trapped and exposed. What do we do now? Shh, he said, his gaze locked on the door. I saw his chest rising and falling rapidly. I wanted to ask him more about the box, about George, but right now, it felt like there was no time for questions. The voices outside grew steadier. I caught bits of hushed conversation, the intonation sending shivers down my spine. We know you're in there, one voice said, low and gravelly. It would be easier if you just came out. Who are they? I whispered, anxiety clawing at my throat. They're after the box, he replied, eyes darting around the room, as if searching for any possible escape. And if they get a hold of it, they won't stop until we're both dead. My mind raced. What did they want? What was in the box? The door rattled again, this time with a force that made the hinges strain. I had to find a way out before they broke in. I breathed deeply, trying to quiet the panic threatening to overwhelm me. Come on, he muttered. We need to find another way out of here. He led me toward a narrow hallway, the faint outline of a window peeking through the darkness. I followed him, fear gripping my gut. Just as we reached the end of the hall, another bang slammed against the door, louder this time. Splinters shot from the wood, and I gasped at the sound. Quick, he urged, pulling me toward the window. I pushed against the frame, but it was stuck. I saw him look over his shoulder, and the urgency in his face ignited a panic within me. Help me! I shouted, pushing harder. The window shuddered, but didn't budge. Break it! He yelled. With an adrenaline-fueled swing, I hit the edge of the glass with my hands. The shattering sound was deafening. My heart raced as we scrambled to make it through the opening. Just as I wriggled my hips through, a loud crash erupted from behind us, the door giving way. Move! He shouted. I leapt outside, landing hard in the damp grass. The night air cut like a blade, and for a moment I was disoriented, but I didn't have time to think. With a frantic pull, I turned to see him behind me, clambering through the broken window, urgency etched into his expression. Over there! I pointed toward the dark line of trees ahead. My pulse quickened at the thought that we were still being hunted. We sprinted into the darkness, breathless and scrambling away from the cabin, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. I heard footsteps behind us, closer now. Then, just as I turned to look back, I saw them. Shadows moving in the moonlight. We dashed toward the tree line, branches scratching at my arms. I could almost taste the fear hanging in the air, sharp and metallic. The shadows behind us flitted closer, shadows melding into deeper darkness. I glanced over my shoulder. There were 3 figures now, their forms barely defined but undeniably menacing. I felt a knot of panic tighten in my chest. "They're coming!" I screamed, my voice barely a whisper above the rustling leaves. "Keep moving!" he shouted, pulling me along, his grip steady but urgent. The forest enveloped us, limbs intertwining like grasping fingers, the darkness thick and smothering. I heard them crashing through the underbrush, limbs snapping beneath their weight. They were relentless, closing in, and my legs felt like lead. Suddenly, he stopped. "This way." He veered to the right, pushing toward a thick cluster of trees. I barely kept up, desperate to trust him completely but filled with doubt. Would he lead me into a trap? We ducked behind a massive, gnarled tree, the bark ragged against my skin. I crouched low, trying to steady my breaths. The sounds of pursuit grew faint, but I knew it wouldn't last. "Do you have the box?" he asked, voice quiet but urgent. I fumbled in my pocket, realizing I still had it. The weight of it was both a comfort and a burden. "Yeah, I have it. We need to keep it safe. If they get it—" He paused, shaking his head as if to clear his thoughts. "If they get it, we're dead. And so is everyone else." "Everyone else?" I echoed, confusion seeping through my fear. "What do you mean?" "It's complicated. They aren't just after us." He peered around the tree, trying to gauge our surroundings. "They want the box because of what it can do. We can't let them have it." Before I could process his words, a figure emerged from the darkness in front of us, silhouetted against the faint light filtering through the leaves. My heart stopped. My mind raced, and I tensed, ready to run again. Where did they go? It was the same gravelly voice we'd heard at the cabin. My stomach dropped. "They're close," he whispered urgently, pulling me deeper behind the tree. "We can't stay here." I shook my head. "We can't just run blindly. We need a plan." "I know a way out." He hesitated, his brow furrowed. "But it's risky. We'll have to trust each other." Trust was in short supply right now. What if this is a trap? He locked eyes with me, urgency shifting to desperation. "If we don't move, we'll be trapped for good. Follow my lead." Just then, the shadow stepped closer, the moonlight catching the edge of a glinting blade. "I can smell you," he sneered, drawing nearer. My blood ran cold. "What do we do?" I gasped, more terrified than ever. His face hardened. "We fight." And just like that, everything changed. I realized there was no turning back now. I was in this nightmare for the long haul. As I prepared myself, something in the shadows shifted, revealing a larger figure. My heart raced as the real danger stepped into view. I felt bile rise in my throat as the larger figure emerged from the shadows, revealing a tall, imposing silhouette. My pulse quickened, instinct urging me to run. The cafe man gripped my arm tightly, his eyes glinting with determination. "Stay close," he whispered. And for a moment I was torn between panic and trust. The figure inched closer, and the night air crackled with tension. I couldn't back down now. I had faced too much already. "Who's with you?" the gravelly voice called, voice tainted with an unsettling calmness. "You've made a big mistake by coming here." I looked at the cafe man, and we nodded almost imperceptibly, a silent agreement. No more running. We had to confront whatever nightmare lay ahead. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, trying to project strength I didn't feel. "What do you want?" The figure chuckled, stepping into the faint moonlight. I could now see a scar running from his cheek to his jawline, an ugly reminder of his dark past. "You're involved now, sweetheart. That box you're clutching holds the key to everything." The cafe man stepped in front of me, glaring bravely at the approaching figure. You think you can intimidate us into handing it over? You have no idea what's at stake. What's inside the box? I pressed, wanting desperately to understand the crux of this twisted game. The figure smirked, an unsettling gleam in his eyes. Truths that can shake the very foundation you stand on. Georgie boy knew too much, tried to take it all away from us. Now you're tangled in the web he spun. Hand it over, and I might let you live. Why should we believe you? I challenged. What's to stop you from killing us after you get what you want? Smart girl, he replied, the smile dropping from his face. But you're a bigger threat than you think, remember that. Your little act of rebellion only brings unnecessary complications. Just as I felt the weight of despair threatening to sink me, the cafe man took a step forward, his voice steady. We won't give it to you. Not now, not ever. The figure lunged, but we were ready. I was still holding the box tightly. It felt like the only tether I had left. The cafe man dashed forward, tackling him off balance. I stumbled back, trying to maintain my grip on the box as the two wrestled on the ground. The scuffle echoing through the eerie woods. In that instant, I felt a surge of bravery. Perhaps what lay within the box was the only way to protect both of us. I quickly unfastened the flaps, praying what I would find inside would give us the upper hand. As the contents spilled out onto the forest floor, momentarily forgetting the fight, time stood still. There were documents, photographs, and even a small flash drive. I didn't know what any of it meant, but I recognized familiar faces, some from the cafe. My heart sank. The connections were too close for comfort. Suddenly, the cafe man broke free from the figure, turning wide-eyed at the sight of the scattered contents. The documents! We can use them to expose them. But the brief moment of hope was shattered as the figure lunged for the box and its contents. In a reflex, I kicked out at him, striking his knee. The sudden move caught him off guard, and he stumbled backward, allowing the cafe man to shove him hard against a nearby tree. Get the drive! He yelled, and I scrambled, hands shaking as I collected the flash drive. I could feel something shift in the air, a weight, a power. The other men from the warehouse had closed in, and I could hear their voices rising from the shadows. We can't lose them! They have the evidence! Panic gripped me, and I looked around. Memories from the past flooded my mind, of running, of confusion, and of people leaving. There was no safe place. I turned to the cafe man, still locked in a grappling hold with the larger figure. We can't stay here, I shouted, my voice cracking with fear. What do we do? We split up! He yelled back, desperation etched into his features. Lead them away! Without waiting for a reply, I made my decision. I dashed back into the shadows, feeling both hunted and alive. My heart raced as I wove through the trees, branches scratching at my arms and face. I could hear their footsteps behind me, the cacophony of pursuit ringing in my ears. For a moment, I felt a flicker of guilt for leaving him, but I pushed it down. I couldn't let them capture the box. Whatever secrets lay inside might be our only hope of escape. Running deeper into the woods, I took a moment to catch my breath. The flash drive gripped tightly in my palm. A part of me feared discovery. Another part was simply too raw to comprehend. What if it was all a conspiracy? What if George's truth reshaped everything I thought I knew? I pressed forward, determined to outrun the shadows. The darkness grew thicker, and just as I could hear the footsteps fading behind me, I came to a clearing. Underneath the moonlight, I stood frozen, chest heaving, as I realized I had come full circle. Before me stood an old, decrepit cabin, the very first one I had escaped from. With no time left, I ducked inside, heart pounding against my ribcage. I needed to buy myself time, and I needed to figure out what I would do with the contents of the box once the storm passed. If it ever did. The door creaked ominously as I backed away into the corner, my breath shallow and anxiety soaring. The fading sounds of pursuit echoed around me, but it wouldn't be long before they regrouped. With trembling fingers, I plugged the flash drive into a battered laptop I found abandoned in the corner, praying it still worked. The screen flickered to life, revealing a chaotic desktop filled with files. I scanned through them, looking for anything that could offer answers or a way out of this mess. Just as I began sifting through the data, I heard voices approaching. their taunting tones slithering through the crevices of the cabin. They were close. I was running out of options, forced to confront the inevitable. What did George know that got him killed? What was this tangled web I was now part of? Suddenly, the laptop screen illuminated with a notification. A file titled, "Truths Revealed," glowed invitingly. Without a second thought, I clicked it open, absorbing every word on the screen, knowing it could become my lifeline or my demise. Outside, the voices grew louder, and I realized that time was slipping away. I wouldn't let them take this opportunity from me. I hadn't fought this hard to be silenced now. With one last glance at the door, I turned back to the screen, focusing on the unfurling truths. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready. And though the impending confrontation felt terrifyingly close, I knew I could confront the shadows once and for all.